Welcome everybody, this is Greg with Laser Bear Industries, here to walk through the assembly of the twin diamond adapter. So to kind of speed things along, I pre-populated most of the pins into this. With your kit you'll have enough pins to fill out every single one of these slots. So that's just what your first step is going to be. Fill out all of those slots. Then you're going to take your PCB board. The side that says back should be faced up. And you're just going to set it over those pins. Kind of wiggle it around until it falls flush. And then next step is to take these screws, just so that you can hold everything in place and you don't have to worry about the pins falling out. Put the nut on. And just snug it up. It doesn't need to be tight or anything. You just want to keep the two halves of this together so that you have something to hold the pins in place while you do the next step. For the next step, so that you can line your pins up, what we're going to do is plug in controllers to the slots. I only have one controller set aside for each port, but you can do it with two controllers of each kind, and then you can have all your ports wired at the same time, or you can do it like I'm doing, where you just do it one at a time. And then what I do is I clamp everything up, which allows me to solder this. So my first step is to go through and I just knock all of the pins down. Just make sure that they're at the bottom of their travel points. Try and back this up just a little bit. Keep it in frame. And then the ones that you've got a controller connected to, go ahead and go through and add a little bit of solder to them. And this is a pretty time-consuming project, just because how many things you've got to do. In most cases you can't do them all at once, so you've got to take a couple of different steps. But you're just going to go through, add a little bit of solder to each one. You want to make sure that the pin gets a good amount of solder connected to it, just so it will hold it in place. Sorry for the kind of rushing air sound. I've got a exhaust system running right now to take care of the soldering fumes, which is always a good idea if you do a lot of soldering, just because solder fumes aren't exactly the most healthy thing for you. Now if these are domed up a little bit, it doesn't matter too much. I added a cavity behind all these pins in the kind of update that I did to make this more friendly to resin printing. So after you get your first set of pins done, go ahead and pull your controllers out. You can plug them into the other side, unless you did them all at the same time with two controllers. And then you're just going to repeat the process. Like I said before, I push the pins down because I want them to all be the same kind of length. Gives a much better kind of look at the end product. And I'm just using a little craft knife to do that. You don't have to use anything too spectacularly special for it. Go in, hit your pins. And once you got them all done, I do like to go back and just kind of hit them with just a little bit of heat for just a little bit longer. It kind of flows that solder around the pin on the other side of the PCB. Since they are not sitting flush, there's a little bit of room for solder to kind of take up position under the flange edge of the pin. After that's done, all you gotta do is remove it from your vise, pull your connectors out, take off the screws, because we are going to have to take off the connector covers so that we can so that we can attach the pins going into the rear connector. Sometimes you might have to slide a craft knife in between and kind of pull it away, but this one for me came out pretty easily. So now the next step is to pin up this connector. For these kits, I made it so you can only pin up the pins that are required, so you don't accidentally put one in the wrong one. So 9 pins go into this connector, and I find it easier to do it when you have it plugged into the port it goes into. So you might have to have a console on the standby or something along those lines, but you can do it without a connector. It's just my preference. I had an old Famicom that was dead. I pulled the connector off of it. I had salvaged a lot of other parts off of it. I think it had a dead PPU or a CPU or something, and I pulled the one or the other off for a high-def NES kit years ago that had a bad CPU, PPU, whatever the alternative was. So I just had it in my parts bin, pulled that connector off of it. It should have 9 pins in your kit. You just populate all 9 of the ports that those fit into. And I usually take something flat and I just level out all my pins. Give it a good touch point like that. And we're just going to come back in with the PCB, fill it back over the part, and we're going to run these screws in so that everything gets held in the correct position while you solder it all up. This time around there's little slots for the nuts to go into, so you've got a good spot to hold everything into. Once you've got that in place, you can see all the pins should be pretty much level. I then will throw it into the clamp and solder up these pins. To solder these pins, what I actually do is I start off by I take my solder and I push it as deep as it'll go into each one of these pins. And then I just come a little bit above that, and that should be enough solder to solder that pin in. And for these ones, you do want these to not be domed out. So if you use too much solder, you might have to come back in and use braid or something to pull the excess solder out. I just come in just a little bit above that, and it seems to be about the perfect amount of solder. And this is just and you're just gonna go through and hit all of those. You can actually see I domed that one, so I want to try to hit it just a little bit longer, see if it'll pop flat, and it did. And just keep going through. My solder is just not cooperating with me. You just want to hit all those points. Just a little bit more on this one. And I just go through and I hit them again one last time. Now, all you gotta do is take your screws out. Put this cover on. When you put it back on, you want this kind of half or little accent piece to be at the bottom edge. So where it says front, you want that kind of pointed that direction and down. And you just let it over top of all of your parts. Now on this, you may have spots where there's just a little bit of filament hanging over. And all you really got to do is stick your bit through that and get yourself a nice cleaner hole. And then you want the 1 and 2 designations to be on the left side. And we're just going to snap everything down. And insert our screws and tighten it down. Oh, did I lose a pen? I did. It fell out, it looks like. Well, that was probably me missing the solder joint. But anyway, I'm just going to put this together real quick to finish off the assembly. Obviously, make sure you check all your pins, make sure they're all in place. And just put it all together. And you are done. And your controllers can get plugged into it now. Alright, thank you, and hopefully this video helps you with your assembly process. Have any comments, questions, feel free to leave them here. This product's available at laserbear.net as fully assembled units, kits, or just the parts if you want to source your own circuit boards and pins and everything. These pins are kind of hard to source. Right now they are in stock. When you're done building it, you can go through with a pair of tweezers and center your pins up a little bit better. They don't have to be perfectly center. The controllers do a pretty good job of fitting on there even if the pins aren't perfectly in line. I think they just figure kids are going to play with these and you need a little bit of leeway for stuff to kind of get bent and moved around. But yeah, you can go through and pull your pins into better alignment if you prefer. But that is the Twin Diamond adapter. Thank you. Have a great day.